The best American horror film in years is out right now, and you need to go see it.
And we are going to tell you why. Welcome. This is the Fright Club Podcast.
I'm Hope Madden.
And I'm George Wolf, and we are from madwolf.com. Taking a little break from the countdown we've been doing. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we did our favorite horror films from the 60s, and then last week, the 70s. So it only follows that this should be the 80s, but there's a good reason that we're stopping to do that. But before we get into that reason, thanks for all your comments about our 70s countdown, our 70s wrap-up. We knew
we were going to get some feedback on that one because, first of all, there's a lot of great movies to cover, and we left some out, as that was pointed out to us.
Yep.
And also because George and I had a little bit of an argument about what the number one film ought to be, and it seems like from the feedback we've gotten, most people agree with George.
You know, and I don't want to really slight the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's just that The Exorcist is so good. We actually had some votes for Halloween.
I was going to say,
to be number one.
Exactly.
Which, okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
I hear you.
Yeah, there are very, very few people, if any, said, no, I think the Texas Chainsaw Massacre should be number one. If anything, if we got a dissenting vote, it was that Halloween should be number one.
So thanks for all that, and keep it coming. We love to keep the conversation going. As you know, on Twitter, we're at MaddWolf, MaddWolf. But all right. To the topic at hand, we'll get to the 80s, all the 80s films, our favorite 80s horror movies next week. So if you want to start throwing in your picks, please do that. But let's talk about this movie.
This thing, it's going to follow you. Somebody gave it to me, and I passed it to you. Wherever you are, it's somewhere walking straight for you. All you can do is pass it along to someone else.
It's called It Follows, and man, you know, and it is such a great mix of uniqueness and the familiar, just masterfully woven together so that you keep sort of thinking, I know this movie, and then you just don't.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, you probably have heard about it. It's getting a lot of hype. We have to give some props to, we write for a website called screenrelish.com. Great website. Check it out. And the head man there, Craig, he's in England, and he tipped us off to this a while ago. Yeah,
he saw it, and I let him know when we were going to get a chance to see the screening, which was about a week before it opened here in the States. And he shot me back an email that said, best horror film in a decade. I'm so serious. And man, it lives up to the hype. And it's not just him. I mean, this movie has a lot of buzz about it. And it's the kind of thing where, by the time you see it, you're going to be like, oh, is it really? But right from the opening scene, it just gets you.
Yeah. It's great because you are bound to have that. You're going to hear some people that say, oh, it's not, because it's not blood and guts. It's not torture porn, which for me is not scary at all. It has it's creepy. It does have a little gore in the beginning. You're like, ooh, but you're right. Right from the opening scene where a girl just comes tearing out of her suburban house in high heels, and she's running, and her neighbors are asking, can I help you? And no one can see why she's running. And then it goes on from there. And right away, you get the feeling that not only is it new, it's a fresh take on things, but it's also throwback to movies. And one we just talked about, Halloween, especially, is the first one that comes to mind.
Right.
Because it's set in the suburbs, and the tree-lined streets immediately from that opening scene kind of make you think of that. The writer-director, David Robert Mitchell, just does a great job, not only with giving you an updated horror entry, but also that he's got his foot firmly planted in some homage to horror movies that shaped him.
If you're not, familiar at all with the plot, basically a young woman finds after a sexual encounter that she has picked up something, and it's not what she might have worried that she was going to pick up. She's picked up an entity, and it is going to follow her until it either kills her or she passes it on to somebody else the same way she got it. Don't disregard this as like the STD of horror movies, because it's so well done. It's so well put together. So it has that, as you're saying, sort of that late 70s, early 80s slasher idea going on. And in fact, the fact that he dives right into it's about sex. The movie is about sex, but it's about adolescence.
Right.
And it's about that sort of languid, it's bored and yet it's rushed, that time period between childhood and adulthood. And boy, does he nail that.
He does, because there's that old cliche in the teen slasher horror movies where as soon if kids have sex, they're going to die. At least one of them is going to die. And he plays on that in a very intelligent way. And that's why it's reminiscent of those older movies, but yet it's not. And another thing he does is give this movie a very ambiguous time period.
Yes,
you try to nail down what year is this. You look at the cars, you look at the clothes, okay, but then you notice that hardly anyone has a cell phone.
Yeah, only the girl in the opening scene. That's the only cell phone in the movie.
They're talking on old phones with
wall phones.
Yeah, wall phones.
All of the TVs have rabbit ears.
They watch old movies and old TV shows.
And the date, they go to a single screen theater with an organist.
Yep, but yet one girl has like an e-reader.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it is. It's a weird looking thing.
Yeah, it looks like a compact, like a seashell-shaped compact.
So very well done there.
Yeah, because I think, while that's weird, one of the things I think that it accomplishes is that no matter who the audience is, they're kind of brought into that nostalgic feeling that a coming-of-age film needs, I think, to be successul.
Yes.
And that's really what this is. It's a coming-of-age film. It's a horror film.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtext, a lot of metaphors you could make, but let's not forget though that it's a horror movie and it's scary and it's creepy.
Oh my God.
And as I said, after the opening scene of a little gore, then it becomes this entity is chasing her, and it can take any form. It can become, as it said in the trailer, someone you know, someone you don't know, so you just don't know. So in the movie, it can change at a moment's notice. It can be a little kid, then all of a sudden it's a 7-foot tall dude.
Oh yeah. And one of the things that I love about the way he built the tension in the film is that, you, the audience, understand the problem before she does. She's still trying to she doesn't know if she even believes him. She basically thinks that she liked this guy and it turns out he was a wacko. That's really what she thinks for the longest time. But we know better. And the way you're driving in a car and you are the audience, you're looking around the periphery. You're looking to see who's walking weirdly straight at the camera. Right. Who is? And there are so many scenes where, because he's got, very much like John Carpenter, he's got this sliding, sneaky camera. And so, the camera sometimes goes on a complete 360. And just out the corner of your eye, you see out in the distance, is it her? And then you're waiting. Please come around. Oh, it is her. She's closer now. And it builds this beautifully well-crafted sense of dread. You're like, it's coming. Where is it?
Because, as you say, in the time it takes for the camera to make a complete revolution, you're catching on to who the entity is before she does. Mm-hmm. Like, it's that person right there. Right. Can't you see? Mm-hmm. They're walking across the grass, and they're going to be closer next time. And it really works well. And
you had mentioned how the filmmaker homages some of the greats, and like you said, Halloween is, I think, the most obvious. That's the most obvious. And there is a scene in a high school classroom where she looks out the window and it's directly, in a really lovely way, not a ripoff, it's a really lovely way. It is taken directly from the movie Halloween. There's also a scene later in the film where she's in her bedroom window. She's watching the bedroom window across the street that is pulled directly from A Nightmare on Elm Street. Mm-hmm. And again, in a great way. I mean, the filmmaker is, I think, clarifying for us that he is very familiar with the really great coming-of-age horror films. And he's got one foot in that, and he's got one foot in his own brand of storytelling that's really great. But here's what I think is interesting to me, and I don't know, I'm not sure if anybody else would agree with this. One of the reasons that I think this movie is as creepy as it is, and it has nothing to do with the American history of coming-of-age horror, the entity walks directly at the camera, which is not very common in American horror movies. It's more common in Japanese horror films for the thing. Think about The Grudge, for example, how that woman, she crawls up and then over top of the camera so that you, the audience, you get that sense it's coming at you. Mm-hmm. And I think that is one of the reasons this movie is as effective as it is because you're not waiting for it to get to her. It's coming toward the audience. Yeah. It's coming toward you, which is one of the reasons that I think it's so like, where is it?
Yeah. And because of what we talked before, you brought up that there are times when the audience knows something before the characters do.
Yeah.
And you're waiting for them to catch up, because the other cool thing about this is once someone has it, only they can see the predator.
Yep.
When they're out with their friends or whatever, and they say, there it is right there. Where? There's nobody here.
Yeah.
Or she runs into a room and shuts the door, and her friends are going, there's no one out here because they can't see it.
Right.
And that's another cool little thing about it, where it just keeps everybody hopping about who knows what is. And
and I think, and there's just a really nicely handled moral ambiguity about it, where, what do? Do you just run from it the rest of your life, or do you give it to somebody else?
Exactly,
and one of the things I love about it is what they clarify, the kid, the guy who gives it to her, if she dies, it comes back to him.
Right.
So you sort of think to yourself, well, I should give it to somebody and hope they give it to somebody and hope they give it to somebody, because the more chains, the more links in that chain, the longer it's going to take before it's back to haunting me again. Right. And because they're all teenagers, they're more apt to really play with that notion. Maybe I'm just going to give it to somebody. I just need to get it off my back. Whereas, and I don't think you can say enough for this cast, because they don't, the performances are not like horror movie performances. They are like indie film performances. There's no affect here. They're very naturalistic.
Yeah,
They're
the lead
very
actress is Mecca
Monroe.
Mecca Monroe. I hope I pronounced that first name correctly. And she's very good, and she is just, you might have recognized her from The Guest.
Right, which is another, if you haven't seen it, is an American film from last year. Not exactly horror, kind of borderline, but it's a good movie.
And she's very good and very natural. And one of her friends in the neighborhood is an actor. Actually, we got to meet a few years ago, a kid named Keir Gilchrist. And you might have seen him in It's Kind of a Funny Story.
Right.
And we happened to go to the Toronto Film Festival that year in 2010 when he was making the rounds with that movie. And we got to talk to the whole cast, really. Zach Galifianakis. We got to talk to Emma Roberts and Keir Gilchrist.
Right.
And he seemed like a very interesting kid. Remember?
Yes.
I asked him what he was into, and he's into different ways of gardening and that botanicals and things like that. And he seemed very like an interesting kid. And so this is like the first thing I think I've seen him in since then.
Although I feel like he's got a really a long list of credits, but I didn't realize. Yeah,
and he's good too.
He is.
But you talk about the subtext and the things that are going on. It's nicely ambiguous, especially the ending. And I'll be honest, maybe the ending will leave some people a little anticlimactic, but it's very well done in the fact that it doesn't tie things up for you. And there's also, make what you will of it, a huge metaphor of water.
Yeah, everywhere.
Throughout this,
yeah.
And we can go into what Freud said about water or whatever, and that ties into this movie. But water, from almost the beginning, is everywhere and ties into it.
There's just, there's so much, and a lot of it is done with the camera, but there's so much in the film about the edges of the innocence of childhood, and sometimes it's pretty clearly marked where they talk. It's set in Detroit, it's up in the suburbs of Detroit, and they talk about crossing 8 Mile.
Yes,
and it's like you're not safe anymore. You're not safe once you've crossed 8 Mile. And but then there's also when she's in the pool at the beginning of the film, and there are the two boys next door who are trying to see her.
Yeah.
And then there's another time where she's up in her. There's a kid has climbed up on her roof to try to peek in the window at her.
Yep.
And then there's another scene later where one of the boys, one of the friends, where you kind of think maybe he's a good kid you like, but he's clearly, you can tell from the camera, objectifying one of the other teenage girls. But this isn't, I'm not knocking Halloween, but this is not a film that objectifies women. It really is not. It's a film that, it's like you said, there's so much subtext here, and it's murky in a good way.
Yep.
I think what it does, as I said earlier, what it does really well is just illustrate that that time of life, there is this hanging dread everywhere of embarrassing yourself in public, of what adulthood is going to be like, there's just so many impending dangers that this just takes to a new level.
Who you can trust to take that journey with you.
Yeah.
That's the thing that makes it very intelligently done for me, is because even though the movie is getting buzz because, you get it from sex,
right?
You could take sex out of this movie entirely and say the subtext has nothing to do with sex at all. It has to do with moving from that one time of life to another, and who you bring with you, who you trust, who you leave behind, who is on your side, who is not. That's digging too philosophically into it, but I think you could make a case for that even though the hook is sex, it's not about that at all.
No.
in many ways. And so it's about a lot of things, and that's what makes it so well done. So, we're very happy that it's getting the buzz that it's getting, and at least from what we see around here, we're in Columbus, Ohio, in the theaters, that it could make some case.
Yeah, it could.
And
I hope so.
I do too.
You know, I mean, it doesn't thrill me that means 2 years from now we're going to see 15 knockoffs, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, I'd rather
right?
I'd rather see a good independent film make a lot of money than, you know, and then put up with knockoffs later than for it to just go unseen. So if you haven't gotten the chance yet, go see It Follows.
Yeah, please do. It Follows. Again, not a splatter fest. You know, if that's what you're into, God bless you. But that, for me anyway,
there are a couple of those coming out later this year.
There are, but please see It Follows. So yeah, so talking about that, and let us know once you do. Let us know what you think.
Yes,
please. We love to hear from you. Again, at Twitter, we're on Twitter at Mad Wolf. But there's some more coming up here. I think these are all slated for this year, right? For 2015 release. There are
a couple that I'm going to mention at some point that they've had international release already, but we don't expect them in the States until this coming year. So
okay. So what do you want to start with?
You know, the one, I don't know how excited to be about it. So there's two. The first two we're going to talk about, these are big major films. And let's start with Poltergeist.
I'm not afraid. How will you get here? Who are you talking to?
Daddy?
Madison! We didn't know where else to go.
This is unlike anything I've seen before.
It's a new, more powerful poltergeist.
Maddie? We need you to come back to us now, honey.
Release this puppy! Leave this house!
Something's wrong, Mom.
Okay, if you haven't guessed, it's the remake of the classic Poltergeist. And this one, it does have a lot of reasons to be excited. First of all, if you didn't notice from his voice, Sam Rockwell is taking the Craig T. Nelson part.
When is he never? When is he not? He's always awesome.
If he's in something,
right.
I'm interested.
Exactly.
But it's basically the same story, and Sam Raimi is
he's producing, which is funny to me too, because one of the reasons I think that the original Poltergeist was as interesting a film as it was, at least for me, it was directed, of course, by Tobe Hooper. Right? But it was produced by Steven Spielberg. And you can see both of them all over that movie.
You can, yeah.
So in this one, it's being directed by Gil Keenan, who directed Monster House, probably easily the creepiest kids movie of all time, right? But it's being produced by Sam Raimi. So to me, it almost seems like the same kind of a situation where you've got two competing styles that we could potentially see, you know, when we watch the film. And anything Sam Raimi does in horror, you're just happy to have him back. And one of the other reasons that I think is find the movie intriguing is that David Lindsay Abaire, who wrote the brilliant independent film, not a horror film at all, Rabbit Hole, he adapted the screenplay. And he's a hell of a writer.
Rabbit Hole, by the way, yeah. If you have not a horror movie, but see it, it's great.
Oh my God, it's great. So he wrote the screenplay, and so you know, so it's for me, it's kind of the behind the scenes, you know, butcher block kind of. This is how we're creating it, folks, that make it more compelling to me than just Sam Rockwell. Although I do love Sam Rockwell, and he has kind of a long history in horror, because a few years ago he made Joshua with Vera Farmiga. Yeah. A pretty good, not great, pretty good, you know, psycho kid movie. But his very first ever film, 1989, Clown House, where some you know, escaped mental patients dress up like clowns and terrorize kids while their parents are out on Halloween. Nice. It's really awful, but it's worth seeing.
So the new Poltergeist, that is scheduled for May 22nd release. So we're excited about that.
And then the next big major release that is worth, I think everybody's pretty geeked about, is the new Guillermo del Toro, Crimson Peak.
Ghosts are real. This much I know.
In your own best interest, proceed with caution.
Has anyone died in this house? Specific deaths, violent deaths.
I'm here to take you away.
There's nowhere else to go. This is your home now.
Beware of Crimson Peak.
Okay, this one is slated more for a Halloween type of vibe. Mm-hmm. This one has a release date right now of October 16th. So we have a ways time to wait. Yeah.
But I think one of the reasons that you can be excited about this one is that Del Toro directs. So, you know, there were 2 or 3 movies that came out in the last couple of years where they attached his name to it, but he really just produced, and he probably, you know, generated the monster imagery that was in the film, but he didn't direct it and he didn't write it, and they were bad. But, you know, the horror films, and I gotta admit, I'm not a big fan of a lot of his more mainstream efforts. But the horror films that he has directed have been magnificent. And I'm really excited about this. Plus the cast. Oh, my God.
The cast is great. You got Jessica Chastain, Tom Hiddleston.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Mia Wasikowska, Charlie Hunnam from Sons of Anarchy.
Right.
Who was smart enough to drop out of 50 Shades of Grey. Nice move, Charlie. So, yeah, that's a great cast. And
Tom Hiddleston, I will see anything he's in. And, Jessica Chastain, she's amazingly talented. Yeah. And it's, exciting to see her in a film like this. It looks like it is definitely a period, kind of a haunted house, kind of a what was in their attic. Hiddleston and Chastain play
Del
brother
Toro
and sister.
Does that stuff well.
Oh, my God, yes. Yeah. That's the thing is that one of the things that there will be some kind of monster in it, which is great. So, yeah, that's another one that I'm super excited about. And I think a lot of people are. There are some others that we want to talk about, too, that are probably likelier to fly under the radar. In fact, there's one that you're likely to confuse with another movie we're kind of excited about. So the first one of the two that you're going to confuse, because we certainly did, and the internet absolutely has, it stars Abigail Breslin. It's called Final Girl.
Hello, boys. I'm Veronica.
So, are you ready for a game?
Depends on the game.
And I want you to run Veronica.
And then what?
We hunt you down.
Only the one with the most will is the strongest. You're gonna have to do this mission alone.
I'm gonna enjoy this.
You are an interesting girl.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. It's almost like if you saw the Saoirse Ronan movie Hannah.
And if you haven't, you should.
You should. Not a horror movie, but very cool. Yeah, as a little girl, she's taken and trained for a certain mission, and then she
by the effortlessly creepy Wes Bentley,
right? And then I guess on purpose, she's put into this situation where she's hunted, a take on the old most dangerous game type of situation. And she kind of gives them the what for, so that could be interesting. But it did get very confusing because that is called Final Girl.
But the one that I actually was looking for at the time, because it got a lot of buzz at South by Southwest, is called The Final Girls.
Right, and we couldn't even find a trailer for that online. So I wouldn't be surprised if one of these changes their title.
Yeah,
because but the Final Girls is kind of another throwback, kind of an homage to horror movies.
And I think it's a horror comedy. I say this because Malin Akerman is one of the stars, and she's a comic actress. And then Taissa Farmiga from all of the American Horror Stories and everything, she's in it as well. And it looks like, from everything I've read about it, a young woman is somehow sucked back into the 1980s slasher that was her mother's most famous film, and her mother played the final girl in this 80s
Scream
slasher,
Queen from the
Scream
80s,
Queen,
right.
and so the daughter now is sucked into that film and has to, I think, fight both of their way out of it. And it got a lot of buzz at South by Southwest, and it seems like a fun concept to me. But yeah, again, good luck trying to figure out which is which, because
so Final Girl and The Final Girls, which both plays off that old horror movie trope of the final girl that we talked about.
Yeah.
We talked about last week. So we'll see what happens with those. Neither one of them have release dates yet, but they have very similar titles, they might want to work on that.
But they both look really fascinating to me in wildly different ways.
Wildly different.
Now, for the bloodlusty among you, I don't know that George was this intrigued by this one, and I gotta admit it's because Pollyanna McIntosh is in it. This is the reason that I'm most interested in it. But it's a film called Let Us Pray.
From midnight, and the wicked must pay for their sins. It's me who comes to collect. So who's first?
Just tell me who you are.
You know who I am. All I want from them is their souls. You, though, I want so much more.
Yeah, it's already been released overseas. Don't know the U.S. release date, but as you can tell, it's one of those pay for your sins, I'm coming for you type of thing. And we're not Game of Thrones watchers, but one of the guys is a Game of Thrones
I think that Liam Cunningham
actor. So Game of Thrones people, that could be up your alley. But
yeah, so I think the basic plot is that it's in a small town police station, and someone comes in, and if he's in the room with you, he can take over your mind and your soul. And man, the trailer is bloody. But again, I mean, the trailer is creepy. The Liam Cunningham's voice of God kind of, narration seemed very creepy to me. But again, I'm all in because of Pollyanna McIntosh, who's the star of one of my favorite horror films, The Woman. And she's so great in it. And so
Although she looks a little different.
She does look a little different in this
one. If you haven't seen The Woman, holy moly.
But anyway, so let us pray. It looks like a bloodbath. And you know what? Every year needs one, Like, we don't have anything against the really bloody movies.
No.
And so hopefully this will be a good one.
All right, so there's a lot to look forward to. There's a lot to enjoy right now. If you haven't guessed, go see It Follows. But there's a lot to look forward to coming up.
You know what? There are like 3 or 4 I just want to throw out really quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's one called 6 Miranda Drive. It's the new Greg McLean, Wolf Creek. It's his new film.
Hello.
And it's family goes on vacation and brings home something. And it stars Kevin Bacon. So
can we just give... Because Wolf Creek, I've encountered people who have wildly different opinions of Wolf Creek. We love it.
We do love Wolf Creek. We do.
Other people... Oh,
John Jarrett, shut up.
So
oh, my
great.
God, he was so great.
Head on a stick.
Head on a stick.
Wolf Creek, love it.
Here's another one that I really want to recommend. That I can't wait to see. It's a German film called Good Night, Mommy. Tons of awards already internationally. Twins, yay. Medical horror, yay. Matricide, what? Oh my God. And then there's another German film that you should be able to see in about a month. I got to see last week. It's called, weirdly enough, it's a German film called The Samurai, and it's kind of a werewolf movie, kind of. It's super weird. It's really well done. I would give that one a look if you get a chance. There's a Belgian film I can't wait to see called Cub, where some Cub Scouts, they go out on a little camping trip.
I was a Cub Scout.
Were you a Cub Scout? How cute is that? And, they tell the story about the feral boy. Well, it turns out the feral boy is real and he kills a bunch of Cub Scouts. And it just looks super... it's going to be one of those camping slashers, but because everyone in peril is a child, it's good. And I believe also the villain is a child.
Does Canteen Boy show up?
I hope not.
Okay, Cub. So there's a few coming down the line to look forward to for the rest of the year, but It Follows is the big one right now. So give it a look. Let us know what you think. We love the voice feedback as well. The Golden Spiral Media feedback line open at 304-837-2278.
Or you can just go to the website, goldenspiralmedia.com/feedback, and you can just leave us a voice message in that way. Just upload a file, and we will listen to it and respond to it next time we're on.
Yeah, and Twitter's always good, too, especially if you want to get a jump on next week, because we are going to go back to the countdown of the decades. We're going to go to the 1980s, and there's a lot in the 80s.
Yeah, but you know what? You know what's not going to make the list? Unless we have an overwhelming number of votes for it and I have to be silenced by the people who are listening, there's not going to be any Friday the 13th on that list.
Okay, well, there you go. See, talk her out of it. Talk her out of it. Make sure, if you want Friday the 13th on there, vote. It's, let us know. It's at Mad Wolf on Twitter. We just like to talk about it.
2 Ds.
Yeah, MADDWOLF. And you can make your own jokes about that.
I wouldn't.
So until then, see It Follows. My name is George.
I'm Hope.
And this is the Fright Club Podcast. Until next week.
Stay frightful, my friends.